LeBron James tweeted a team photo of the Miami Heat wearing hoodies to pay tribute to Martin, who was wearing a hoodie when he was killed. The picture is seen behind me. What was your reaction to the Heat's tribute? Skip, you start.
Stephen A.
Yes, sir.
When I first heard this story, I, like millions of Americans, leaped to the conclusion that this was a racially motivated murder of an unarmed kid who was profiled because of his attire. And at the very least, I thought at the time, the shooter should be arrested and immediately indicted. And I still feel that way about that part of what I know. So when I saw the Heat's team picture, my first thought was, good for them for supporting the family of a Florida kid who was a big Miami Heat fan, who was on his way home from a 7-Eleven to watch the Heat players in the All-Star game, to watch D. Wade and watch LeBron and watch Bob. But I must tell you, this is very troubling to me. Now, the more I read and hear, the less I feel I know about what actually happened. What did happen? I got to tell you, I don't know for sure. I'm not sure anybody knows for sure, because I just read an Orlando Sentinel piece, and they acquired the police report that was leaked to them, which cites eyewitnesses that Trayvon Martin initiated the physical confrontation, that he struck the first blow, according to the police report, and wound up on top of the shooter, pounding his head against the concrete. Is that what happened? I don't know. I have no idea. I have very mixed emotions now, because I sit back and think, wow, is it possible that the Heat overreacted and that they ran the risk of helping fuel or spark a national lynch mob mentality wrongly? I don't know. Maybe they were right, but maybe they were wrong, because I'm still at that crossroads of, please tell me what really happened so I can draw a conclusion and have a valid opinion. Do you know what happened?
I do not. Let me say this. My personal gratitude to ESPN and this show, and specifically you, because I came to you and told you this morning I wanted to discuss it. So I thank you, and you, Jay, for giving me the platform to do this. Let me be clear. We don't know all the facts. I was on 710 ESPN LA the other day, and I said that. We don't know all the facts. So we have to be incredibly careful, particularly the black community, for jumping to conclusions without knowing all the facts, because particularly in a case like this, if we jump to conclusions and then it's found and discovered that we were wrong in a significant fashion, then it takes us back. It really, really does, because again, arguments, poignant, substantive arguments against race gets muted when you make the wrong case. So I'm always cognizant of that. But while saying that, it's incredibly important that we understand where these players for the Miami Heat were coming from, because I don't think what they've done has been given enough justice. What they're saying is that there are white guys on the Miami Heat too that wore hoodies.
Sure.
There was Eric Spoelstra, who came out and wore, and was saying that he was in support. And Pat Riley, the organization, they were in support because it's such a tragedy. They never mentioned the word black. They didn't sit there and say an African-American child. What they said was a 17-year-old unarmed boy carrying a bag of Skittles was gunned down. That's what they said. And that is what everybody has been reacting to. Now, you might see Al Sharpton and Reverend Jesse Jackson out there, and obviously you think race. It's predictable that you would feel that way. No problem there. No problem there. You see the family standing front and center, and they're talking about this is racially motivated. So we understand where it's coming from. But the reason we touched on this story is because the sports angle is, first of all, thank God athletes actually stood up for something in the modern day age, because we don't see that very often, all right? We didn't see it with Jordan. We haven't seen it with Tiger. We haven't seen it with a plethora of other guys. Thank the good Lord that Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, and those guys stood up and did this. But they did it because the issue at hand are potential stereotypes, not judging a book by its cover. And that's what needs to be addressed. So there's nothing wrong with what they did. Now, when we ask the question, let's get into what happened. You know what argument I made on the radio the other day? We might need to know a lot more for this dude to be thrown in jail and locked up and have the key thrown away. But I don't think we need to know more than we know now for this man to be arrested.
I agree with that. Yeah, I'm with you.
A 17-year-old unarmed kid was gunned down. The Stand Your Ground laws in the state of Florida particularly stipulates that you have the right to defend yourself. But force upon force, equal force. There is somebody that was prosecuted successfully in the state of Florida because he got into a fist fight with a football player and fatally stabbed him. The football player wasn't armed. You therefore had no right to stab him. Well, if that's a precedent, then what is the matter with somebody looking at this gentleman and saying, excuse me, he didn't have a gun, you did. You're 200 pounds, he's 160. He's 17, you're 28. There's a lot of dynamics to this that can't be ignored. So when you have black folks, Hispanic folks, or anybody in support of their position standing front and center and saying, excuse me, something's wrong with this picture, that's a red flag right there. When you couple it with the fact that somebody brought up the fact that the kid was thrown out of school because he had an empty marijuana bag or whatever, as if that has any degree of relevancy, that's another thing that stirs the emotions of the black community because it's irrelevant to this case at hand, and that doesn't mean that a violent confrontation was warranted. But then also, we have to also take into account the fact that, again, when I point out those other things, history comes into play. You can't ignore the fact that historically the black community has had a problem with law enforcement officials, with information that they say, you know, may have been fabricated, whatever. We don't know. And I'm not going there. I'm not even trying to go there. And by the way, where is this ESPN, this sports? I have an obligation to be responsible to this network and to myself. I'm not calling out the cops or anybody like that. I'm simply addressing the fact that as professional athletes, who we are quick to say, you are a role model. You have to stand for something beyond sports. You can't just be a guy that plays on the field and then you go and do what you want to do, act the way you want to act, or whatever the case may be. All of a sudden, we're just going to floss over the fact that they've taken a stand. Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, the Miami Heat organization led by Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, standing by their players, stood up and said, we support this. Why? Because at no time did the NBA players say black. Amari Stoudemire and Carmelo Anthony wearing their hoodies last week. They never said black. They said a 17-year-old unarmed boy was shot dead. Now, maybe they did it to bring attention to the fact that a black child was murdered.
Sure.
But more importantly than anything else, they didn't articulate and elocute those words. They took action to bring attention to something that should have never been devoid of attention. We should have been on this from day one. And that is why I applaud what they have done. I support them wholeheartedly in what they did. And I think now we should all keep an eye on what transpires from this moment moving forward.